Welcome to episode 51 of Accessible Finance, where we demystify personal financial topics and answer your questions so you leave saying, I get it now. I'm Eric Johns.
And I'm Rachel Johns.
Let's dive in.
All right. So, Eric, I had talked to you briefly about this before, but for you all to
Okay.
be in the know, I was perusing some various like social media groups that are specifically known for, um, financial discussions, especially in this situation, financial scenarios. And I came across one where there was some information. There wasn't too much, but I thought it was a really interesting one for us to discuss.
Great. Let's
Okay.
go.
So the overall questions that were included in the scenarios, just so that they're in the back of your head while I give you the details, um, was someone interested in balancing their withdrawal strategy to ensure they don't outlive their savings while still leaving a legacy
Okay.
for their family. Considering whether they should consider setting up a trust or what other estate planning tools to minimize taxes and ensure their wishes were fulfilled.
Okay.
And then the pros and cons of giving assets now or gifting assets now versus leaving them as an inheritance.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
So the general facts, it was a 70-year-old person retired this year.
Okay.
So
Single?
presumably he only was talking
Unmarried
about
at least?
himself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
There's no mention of a spouse or any other income or anything like that.
Okay.
Currently annual spending is about 80,000. It's getting 40,000 in Social Security.
Okay.
Okay. As far as what assets he's got, he has 8K in checking, 60 in savings, which is housed in a money market account.
Okay.
Then he's got 1.2 million in a 401k
Okay.
focused in dividends.
Mm-hmm.
300 in a Roth IRA,
Okay.
which he's appropriately invested in like high growth potential
Mm-hmm.
stocks. And then 500K in a taxable brokerage account, which he said is focused on blue chip stocks and bond ETFs.
All right.
He also has a fully paid off house at 800K and about 200 in other assets. So
The house was what, 800?
800.
All right.
Yeah, no mortgage. And so his goal is really just to support a comfortable retirement for himself. He said comfortable for him is about 80,000 while leaving as significant an inheritance to his kids and grandkids as possible.
Okay. Got it. Got it. Right. So
Question number one was really, how do I balance my withdrawal strategy? Because he's just entered into retirement. First year. Why are you giddy?
I thought we were going to start with the Roth conversion ladder. I got all excited. I thought I'd just get to talk about whatever I want, and that was going to be one of the things that I was going to talk
Well,
about.
we want to answer
Between
his
years,
questions, but like
between years 70 and 73, presumably.
well, and I do think that it's okay, and we'll talk about that.
Well,
But I
age 70
think
and
it's
73, I should
important
say.
sometimes when people come with questions. We've been in
To
this
actually
situation.
answer their questions
Well,
and not
not
ignore them and
no.
talk about whatever I want.
Well, that too. But no, not just that. I think that sometimes we'll have people come with questions and good questions, but then there are more pressing questions that they don't even necessarily know to ask.
Sure.
So I think it is important to be able to not only address the questions here, but to discuss any
Other
potential
opportunities.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Um,
So let's go. What is the first question?
First question was balancing the withdrawal strategy to ensure he doesn't outlive his savings.
Okay.
Right. He is able to kind of live comfortably at that 80,000 annual spending and then still leave as much a legacy as possible. Because his narrative afterwards, there were questions that were asked. His concern was, I've lived really comfortably on 80,000. I want to maintain living comfortably on 80,000.
Okay.
I am slightly fearful that once I get comfortable, I might start to up how much I'm spending. And so I don't want to do that to the detriment of leaving the legacy for my kids. If there's room to be able to spend more and enjoy it more, I'd love to do it, but I am okay capping it at 80 if need be.
Okay. We would start then. We'd start by making sure that he's actually spending 80,000.
Yeah.
We always talk about with cash flow, right? So
Correct.
we want to look at his cash flow, ensure that his numbers are accurate, ensure that he's actually spending 80. Social Security, we said, is covering 40 of that,
Yeah,
right?
it's half.
So we have a $40,000 shortfall or $40,000 that we need to withdraw from all of our retirement accounts.
Correct.
We don't currently have RMDs. We
Correct.
have in our brokerage account, one of the things that I heard that immediately made me think was in the brokerage account, you said there were some bond ETFs.
Yeah, so he's got blue chip stocks and bond ETFs.
Right. So we're going to
Pulling
be
it up.
producing taxable dividends, which is
Mhm,
fine. They're presumably qualified. He says blue chips. I assume
mhm,
he's held them for over a year.
mhm.
Those are going to be qualified dividends, and we just want to change the location, the asset location, just to just real quickly talk about what location means. We're talking about where the assets are held. So even if you decide that your portfolio, let's assume that we think you're 60, or that you believe and we believe, everyone believes that you should be 60/40 equity to fixed income, right? So
Mhm.
stocks to bonds. We still want to make sure that we're holding that 40% of bonds in the right place and the 60% of stocks in the right
Right.
place. So asset location refers to just holding the correct securities in the correct places for tax planning purposes, right? So what happens is we want to hold securities that produce taxable income. Taxable income, I mean taxable at ordinary income rates within tax deferred accounts, because when you withdraw money from a tax deferred account, remember tax deferred means IRAs, 401ks in this
Yeah.
case. All right. So we want to make sure that we want to make sure that we're trying to match the tax consequence to the asset, to the asset that's held there, right? So tax deferred, ordinary income producing securities typically, right? So anyway, we want to move. All that takes really is you can just sell. Well, we don't know if the bond ETFs are pretty unlikely to have tremendous amount of gains right now, depending on the period that he's held.
Correct.
But those aren't going to have. They're not going to be as likely to be trapping a ton of gains than like maybe if he said he was holding like an S&P 500 ETF and we were looking to sell it, in a taxable account, we'd probably be incurring tremendous capital gains there, so
Yeah.
tax consequences there. However, we're talking bond funds, probably not a ton of movement, but we do want to make sure that we're not going to be generating enormous capital gains. But
Right.
the idea is we would want to sell that there, perhaps buy stocks if that's his goal, and
Mhm.
then buy the bonds within the tax deferred account. Sorry, I just talked for about 3 minutes about asset allocation and didn't answer his question yet. But basically, we're trying to come up with this 40K shortfall, right?
Right.
So one of the things we could do is we probably want to sell some of his brokerage. Assuming he doesn't need this 500K to live on in the very near term, we're happy to use that to do a couple things.
Yeah.
One, fund possibly a Roth conversion ladder over the years from age 70 to 73 when his
Yeah.
RMDs begin. So he's got 3 years, age 70, 71, 72, for him to start taking. I guess he could push his RMD out to April 1 of the year after he turns 73. So he could do it the year 74, but then he's got to double take. Then he's got to double take the RMPs.
All right.
Anyway, we could math that out.
Super granular.
Sorry,
That's okay.
I like to go hard. Um,
But I think that,
the
like,
gist of the question is he's fine. He's got
correct.
well over $1 million. We probably round this up to what, $2 million. And we're
He's
talking
got
about a
two
four
there.
percent withdrawal rate. He could comfortably then take, what are we saying, 80K out of the total portfolio. All right, so he only needs 40.
Correct.
So it's likely he's going to be in just fine shape there.
Okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
going to be pretty good shape. He's 70 years old. 4% withdrawal rate is pretty sensible.
Yeah.
We're going to use Monte Carlo analysis and everything else and
Correct.
math out all of his other goals here. But ballparking, back of the envelope, looking pretty good.
It's important to know here because, he had kind of elaborated after there were other questions asked, is that, he had said, like, if there's an opportunity to be able to spend more, then I'd like to, but if I need to stay at 80, then I'm fine doing that. And I think that it's important to know that there's no one right answer here because it depends on how much he would value spending an additional 10,000 a year versus
Leaving some to his kids, yeah.
exactly. So it's less about what is the right answer and more about understanding what the long-term impact is of spending an additional 10,000, right? If it means that it's reducing 100,000, 200,000 from the legacy, he might be fine with that. If it means reducing 1 million from the legacy, he might be less fine with that.
Right.
So being able to run those numbers just so that he can understand the impact and then make the decision best for him, I think is
Okay.
huge.
So let's answer. I'm going to try to concisely answer the next questions, and
Okay.
then I'll give some ballpark thoughts.
Some additional
some general thoughts.
So question number 2 was, should I consider setting up a trust or using other estate planning tools to minimize taxes and to ensure that my wishes are fulfilled in maximizing the amount of legacy that is capital?
Short answer to that question, no, probably not. You're not anywhere close to the lifetime maximum gifting,
Correct.
which is 13 million right now. It's going to go to 7, but you're still well under that.
Correct.
You should be good to go. Um, does he have? Are we talking individuals like that he wants to give these things to, or charities? I guess either way, he'd still be able to gift it
So yeah, he didn't specify
freely.
anything. He specified kids, grandkids.
Oh, okay.
So like
Then
where
yeah,
would
if he has
ordinarily
kids and
happen.
grandkids, there's really no concern that his money's going to balloon and keep ballooning, and
Right.
especially if he wants to withdraw potentially 4% and double what he's spending, or not double what he's spending, but 50% more than he's
Increase.
spending right now,
Right,
right? So if he
exactly.
wants to spend 120 instead of the 80 that he's currently spending,
Right.
then
It
he
would
might
just be
want
that.
4% withdrawal rate, in which case we're not terribly worried about him brushing up against any annual gifting,
Correct.
lifetime gifting exclusions.
Correct. And then and I think that and this is something we've seen frequently when we're talking to near retirees, post retirees,
Yeah.
even people who are, butting up against 50 and are starting to think far down that line, not that far down the line, but are starting to think there. We see a lot of concern about,
State tax?
yes.
Yeah.
And there's this like misconception of what it is and how it's
Right.
handled and how scared we should be about it. And so oftentimes this is a question that's asked, and I would say 90% of the
That's
time,
usually you're fine as the answer.
you're good. Okay. And then his third question that he had talked about, which I kind of condensed it into a question, was what were the pros and cons of gifting assets now versus leaving them as an inheritance?
So okay, that's a good question, right? So if he's gifting now, he's locking in the basis. So when you gift an asset, the recipient, right, the beneficiary of that gift, is going to inherit your basis. So if I buy a stock at $100, right, a share, and now it's, well, let's assume I buy like an issuance, right? I buy one stock and it's $100 a share. Okay,
Okay.
it now is worth $1,000 a share.
Right.
I gift it to my son Connor. Okay,
Okay.
Connor has the stock.
He's
His
going to
basis,
tell
if
the
I
other two
gift
that
it,
he's your favorite.
his basis, if I gift him that stock, is and he's going to inherit my basis of $100 a share. So if he goes and sells that, he incurs a capital gain of $900. Remember, we said it was $1,000 market
Right.
value, $100 purchase price, or cost basis. Okay, so
So if you
if
gift
you
now while
gift
you're
it, you
alive,
lock in your own basis. You
right.
transfer your basis. However, if the beneficiaries inherit the securities through your estate, they will receive a step up in basis.
Unless
What? Oh, the
okay, well,
Louisiana
yeah,
usufructuary.
there is a separate episode, but that is a yes.
You always complain that I'm going too
I'm
granular
just
here.
saying that was not fully
Right, we
accurate. This
did
is
we did
true.
address that in the past. We did
Um,
talk about that for Louisiana
so
couples.
for highly appreciated assets or appreciated assets, gifting them while alive,
Not amazing.
right?
Probably don't do that if you can help it. However, what he can do is he can take things like he can gift cash. Obviously, you can gift cash whenever you want, and there's no basis in cash, so you're good to go there. You can also gift up to the annual exclusion, which in tax year 2024 is 18,000 a person. So he can gift 18,000 to any number of individuals without incurring any even you don't have to file a gift tax return. You don't have to file Form 709 if you're gifting
Or
$18,000 or
no
less.
taxable event.
Correct. There's no tax liability. And even if you want to gift more than 18,000, maybe he wants to gift, $100,000 to, a son or a daughter to go make a down payment on a house or something like that, right?
Mhm.
He can still do that. He files Form 709 and does not incur any tax consequence
'Cause
until his
right.
annual lifetime gifting
Exclusion hits
exclusion
it,
exceeds that, 13,000 or I'm sorry, $13 million equivalent in 2024.
which he doesn't have
He's
to give.
not going to hit that, right?
Um,
Not close.
and so I think that that's something, and we talked about this a bit. Something that we're seeing is that there's a lot less concern than I think what's been seen in the past with kind of holding on to and hoarding your money, and then like when you pass, being like, here it all is,
Right.
because there's a very, very real benefit to seeing the people you love enjoying it when you're alive.
Yeah, I love this. I'm a
Yeah,
huge proponent of gifting while you're here
yeah,
to see the gifts used.
correct.
It's
So
also
yeah,
true.
yeah, yeah, don't go.
What, you were
No,
going to say the same thing?
I don't know. Go.
I was going to say that it's most beneficial to gift people dollars when they're younger. All right,
I can't
okay.
do the same thing.
When they're older. Rachel's excitement should be evidence that we're not scripting any of this. This is genuinely good.
Yeah, I'm very excited. oftentimes there are things that we're on the same wavelength about, and there are things that we're not. But that's exactly what I was going to say. And that's what came to mind when you were mentioning like the down payment on a house, because at the point in time that you were trying to be, purchasing your first home or having your first child,
Right.
money is at its tightest
Correct.
typically. And so,
Fresh out of college, starting a
correct, you
family, like
haven't built
you're
up
lowest.
savings. Correct.
Whereas if you live to, 80, 90,
Yeah.
and your kids are now in their 50s and 60s, they might already be rich. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like they
They
might be
may
living nicer than
they
you.
may just add it to the pile of money that they still.
Exactly. Now
That's
they're
not to
just
say
that's not bad.
no,
Nothing's
it's not
wrong
to
with
say that that's not a significant benefit
sure.
for that. It's an amazing thing. But if we're looking at the percentage of increase of wealth at the
Oh,
time
it's
that you receive
huge when
it,
they're younger.
correct. And so being able to really step in and help at the time when things are the tightest and the time when they're really trying to establish,
Yeah.
whatever their life goals are, can be hugely impactful.
Right. It's incredibly beneficial in our view, and we've seen it because it benefits the giver, right? In that
Correct.
case, it benefits the
Very
parent more,
fulfilling.
and the kids are going to enjoy it more
Correct.
because they need it more, right? The need's higher, the demand's higher.
That makes me so happy that
No,
we
it's
are on
great.
the
It's
same.
it's definitely it's definitely the way to go.
I love it. Okay, so those were addressing his three questions. But typically, if we have someone coming with a scenario, what we like to do when we create an agenda for a meeting or anything like that is we always will prioritize whatever the client, prospect, whomever we're meeting with wants addressed first.
Mhm.
But then we're also going to, in the second part of the agenda, add the things that they may not have thought about or asked about, but things that we feel are really important to be discussed. So this opens up the door to some Roth conversion ladders, like you were
Sure, we could
talking
talk about Roth conversion ladders, and we've talked about that, ad nauseum. I'm sure everybody's sick of hearing about it. The consideration here is that right now we have about $40,000 of
about.
Social Security income, which is possibly good for us because, well, it's going to exceed the tax. Sorry, I don't. We don't.
He has a
I was
lot
getting
going on
into
in his
the
brain.
yes, correct. I was getting into the weeds, and then realizing, you know what, it's still going to be 85%. 85% of the Social Security is going to be taxable. However, we're at $40,000 of Social Security. We're still going to be in the 12% bracket. So what we want to do is we want to, at the minimum, fill up that 12% bracket. And then we want to think about, we want to start planning for what happens at age 73, even if I didn't need the money, right? What happens when when the government says, "Hey, you know what? We need you to pay tax on these
Yeah,
dollars." It's gonna be called your require beginning date, right? So your RMDs begin,
days.
and you have to start taking them. When they begin in this case, if we're just spitballing at 2 million, it's probably something like 60K a year, somewhere in that ballpark
Do you have the 60K on top of the
of the
40?
40. So now we're at 100K. So if we're at 40 right now and we're slated to be at 100 later, right? And we're going to have growth in these tax deferred funds, right? We have what is this 1.2 mil in there.
Mhm.
Um,
And that's not mentioning any of the like taxable, like the dividend or any kind of things in the taxable brokerage,
correct.
which
Oh,
we did
right. They
discuss.
also produce tax consequence.
Correct.
So part of the yeah, there's a number of ideas here. So one, we want to look at the tax. We want to look at the whole portfolio. Make
Mhm.
sure that the allocation is something that this individual will be comfortable with. And then when we want to start looking at making changes, we want to be mindful of our tax brackets.
Mhm.
So basically, all we're just going to look at your tax brackets now versus later. What are the differences in your effective tax rate
Right.
in these years versus future years? And then we want to consider things like the IRMA brackets.
Yeah.
Presumably, he's 7 years old. He's probably on Medicare. So we want to look at the IRMA impact on these conversions.
Correct.
And that we add and people are like, IRMA, what are we talking about? We're talking about the Medicare premiums that are incurred from crossing thresholds. And it's kind of interesting. The thresholds do not align with the tax brackets. So
Correct.
it's not like right at the
It's
border
not like
between
I'm
22 and
in
24.
22, so I'm paying this. I'm in 24, so I'm paying this.
Mhm.
It's a really complicated thing, and I think that it's something we struggle to convey in a simple manner to some of our clients because it's already so overwhelming when you're looking at retirement. You already are looking at such complex things, but we do have software and program that does a really great job of making it a visual thing so that it helps, make that a bit more tangible.
Yeah, and then another thing that's like pretty low hanging fruit. He's not employed, right? He's retired. He's
Correct.
taking Social Security,
Just
and yet
retired.
we said he has $102 million. Or I'm sorry, not 102 million.
1.2,
$1.2
yes.
million in a 401k account.
Correct.
Do we need it to be in a 401k account? What benefit are we deriving from its location in a 401k? And then, Eric, why are you talking about 401ks like they're bad all of a sudden? Typically, 401ks have a non-zero amount of fees.
Correct.
Okay, so IRAs, like if you have an IRA at Schwab or Fidelity or Vanguard, one of the low cost brokerages, you will have zero fees.
Yeah.
You won't be charged fees, period. Right? Like that's just how it works. Maybe somebody will find an example and email me and tell me I'm wrong. But typically there aren't any. There might be some transaction costs if you're buying options or something within the
Sure.
account, but you're not typically going to have any fees at all. Whereas in a 401k, you
Like the
typically
management
will
fees.
have some kind of an administrative fee.
Correct.
If you're with a large employer like Ochsner locally, charges their participants $5 a year. Pretty reasonable, right? But
That is not the norm.
that is not the norm. Some people
Not
will be charged up to maybe 2%
Which,
of their balance
and they
annually.
do an amazing job of
I mean, that's $24,000.
correct. And they do an
That's a
amazing
big
job
deal.
of taking that number and really hiding it in some super fine print.
It's
And
hard to
since
find.
they're
It is.
pulling it from money that you're not
Actively looking at. Yeah.
correct,
Most
it's
people don't
not
even look at
money in
those
your wallet that
statements.
you then have to hand out. So people have no clue what they're being charged on
Right.
that.
They're not asking you to write a check for it. They're just taking it from the account.
In addition to
quarterly
that,
usually.
we've seen a variety of 401ks where the variance is massive.
Mhm.
And so some 401ks, even if the management fees are low, the options that they have to invest in.
That's exactly correct. That's the next point I was going to
great.
make. So if you're in an IRA of any sort, really, if you're in an IRA getting held at one of those like low cost brokerages, the fees, the possibilities are limitless. You can basically buy anything with a ticker. Okay, you can buy any security you want.
Mhm.
Whereas the 401k will have a curated list.
Correct.
Who curates that? It depends on who's providing the 401k service,
Mhm.
right? So it's your plan provider essentially, right? So it can be. Sometimes you'll see only like American funds and all or T. Rowe Price or whoever it's going to be, and it'll be only 100 basis point minimum on each of those fees. So maybe we're being charged an administrative fee of let's call it 100 basis points or 1%,
Mhm.
and then all of our funds in there also charge another 1%.
Exactly.
That's another way to get to our
So
2% and
you
make us
see
pay
1% and
$24,000.
think, okay, like it's not great, but it's not the worst. That's not the comprehensive fees either.
Exactly.
It gets really, really complicated. I will say, I think that it's possible that some people may potentially stay in a 401k because they're like, somebody made this fund. It's something that I don't feel comfortable doing. And so I'd
Right.
rather be there. There are ways to look at where the money's invested in the 401k and essentially replicate that
Oh,
in the
absolutely.
IRA
You can
if that's what you
almost definitely do that.
Yeah.
I've never seen that be,
not an
prohibited,
option. Yeah,
right? Right. Like you're always going to have that. That's always going to be a viable option.
correct. I just
If
wouldn't
it's
want
not
to-
buying exactly the same things, you can still employ the same strategies
correct.
because you have access to literally everything. Like, how could it be worse to have no fees and access to all of the things?
Right,
You know what I
right,
mean? Like,
right.
it can't be worse.
Exactly. Now, I will say, so just to kind of recap or put a bow on the things that we discussed as the takeaway for our friend, give him a name.
I don't know, John.
John, our friend John. So in John's situation, as we would do with anybody that we work with, the first step would be verifying the cash flow. Then we would want to look to optimize the asset location, making sure that they're invested in the right types of accounts.
Get the bonds out of the brokerage.
Correct. There are no estate tax concerns in this situation. And like we discussed, 9 times out of 10, there are no estate tax concerns. But sometimes it's comforting to hear.
Yeah, it's still pressing on. Yeah, it's still causing them.
Gifting now, if he's to gift now, locks in the current basis, so it's less ideal for appreciated assets. However, with cash or potentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, ones that have like some locked in losses.
You don't want to gift losses. You would want to
'cause he
sell it,
wants that on
take
his
the
tax
losses.
return,
Right.
and then use the
You would
cash.
sell it, take
Yeah.
the loss, and then gift the proceeds.
So you'd really want to, if you're giving securities, give something that is pretty much at stasis.
A flat.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or just sell it and then gift.
So the gift, you can gift up to the annual exclusion in cash, which is $18,000 per person without incurring any taxable event. You could also lump sum, file a form, and you would just have to make sure you're not exceeding the lifetime gifting amounts.
Right.
And then you would certainly want to look at if they're no longer employed or actively engaged with their 401k, like service provider. Making sure or verifying whether they really want to keep it in a 401k or roll it into an IRA, and then making sure that he definitely understands the benefits potentially of the IRA.
Exactly correct.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks, Rach, and thank you guys for
Yeah.
listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review the show. And if you have any topics you'd like discussed or financial problems you'd like solved, reach out to us at podcast@equilibriumfp.com or visit our website, equilibriumfp.com. Thanks,
Until
guys.
next time. Good luck, John.